3 and start this chapter 4. Okay? Only a moment. Starting there, read this. Item 44, 24, chapter 3 final. In the less evolved beings of creation, we are talking with Kardec. Creatures that destroy other creatures, animals that destroy other animals. In the less evolved beings of creation, in those in which the moral sense doesn't exist, or in which intelligence has not yet replaced instinct, the struggle will have no other driving power than the satisfaction of a material need. And one of the most imperative needs is that of nutrition. They struggle, therefore, solely to stay alive. I don't know, solely or solely to stay alive, to capture or defend their prey, since they could not be stimulated by a higher motive. It's in this preliminary period that the soul takes its first steps and prepares for life. Is a life and development before human being. Let me use this because here is so hot. In humans, there is a period of transition in which they are hardly distinguishable from the brute. In the early in the early stages, the animal instinct dominates and the struggle. It still has for its motive the satisfaction of material necessities. Later on, the animal instinct and the moral sentiment counterbalance each other. Humans then struggle no longer to nourish themselves, but to satisfy their ambition, pride, and the need to dominate. To do so, they must continue to destroy. However, as the moral sense takes over, sensitivity develops and the need for destruction decreases. It even ends up disappearing and becoming odious. Then humans become horrified at bloodshed. Nevertheless, the struggle is always necessary, for the evolution of the spirit. Because even when it has reached the point that seems culminated to us, it's far from being perfect. It's only at the expense of its activity that it acquires knowledge and experience and rids itself of the last vestiges of animality. However, from that time onward, struggle rather than being bloody and brutal becomes purely mental. Humans struggle against difficulties and no longer against their fellow beings. And now have a bit note, not so bit, without prejudging the consequences that may be taken from this principle. We only want to demonstrate through the explanation that the destruction of living beings by one another no way invalidates the divine wisdom and that everything in nature is linked together. This linkage is unavoidably broken if one ignores the spiritual principle. That is why so many issues are unsolvable if only matter is considered. Materialist doctrines carry within them the principle of their destruction. They have against them not only their antagonism toward the aspirations of humankind and the moral consequences that render them objectionable as society agents of the solution, but also the need we feel to figure out all that is born from progress. Intellectual development leads humans to search for causes. Thus, even with little reflection, it would not take them long to recognize the powerlessness of materialism to explain everything. How could doctrines that satisfy neither heart, reason, nor intelligence, leaving the most vital issues unanswered, even prevail? The progress of ideas will kill materialism just as it killed fanaticism. This is a note from Kardec. The whole of science in Genesis, chapter 4. The history of the origin of nearly all ancient peoples is mingled with their religion. Hence, their first writings were religious in nature. And since all religions are connected with the beginning of things, it also includes humankind. The explanation these religions provide regarding the formation, and arrangement of the universe is relative to the state of knowledge at the time as well as the knowledge of their founders. That is why the first sacred writings were simultaneously the first writings on science, just as they were for a long time the whole code of civil law. Because in early times the means of observation were unavoidably highly imperfect, the first theories concerning the system of the world would have to have been rented, tainted with blatant errors. But even if such means had been as complete as they are nowadays, humans would not have known how to utilize them. Moreover, such means could only be the result of the development of intelligence and the consequent understanding of the laws of nature. As humans evolved in their knowledge of those laws, they grasped the mysteries of creation and corrected their former ideas about the origin of things. People were unable to resolve the riddles of creation until the time in which the key was given by science. It was necessary that astronomy opened the doors to infinite space to enable them to probe its depths. That through the power of calculus, they could determine with strict precision the movement, position, volume, nature, and whole of heavenly bodies. That physics revealed to them the laws of gravity, heat, light, and electricity. That chemistry teach them about the transformation of matter and mineralogy, the minerals that make up the globe's crust. That geology teach them to read in the geological strata the globe's gradual formation. It behooved botany, zoology, paleontology, and anthropology to initiate them into the filiation and succession of organically structured beings. With archaeology, they could follow the footprints of humankind across the ages. In other words, by complementing one another, all the science were to bring their indispensable contingent to the understanding of the history of the world. In their absence, people had only their original theories as their guide. Likewise, before humans possessed such elements of evaluation, all Genesis commentators whose reasoning ran up against material impossibilities spun, spun around in the same circle without being able to depart from it. They were able to do so only when science opened the way by breaking through the old edifice of beliefs. Then the aspect of everything changed. Once the wire was found, the problems were quickly ironed out. Instead of an imaginary genesis, they had a positive and, in some ways, experimental genesis. The domain of the universe extended into the infinite. We saw that the earth and other heavenly bodies had been formed gradually according to eternal and immutable laws that arrested much better to the great grandeur and wisdom of God than did the creation that miraculously popped out on nothing of nothing, like a set change in full view of a theater audience, because the divinity had suddenly changed its mind after an eternity of inaction, inaction. Since it's impossible to conceive of Genesis without the data supplied by science, one could state in all truth that science has been called upon to construct the real Genesis according to the laws of nature. As it now stands in the 19th century, has science resolved all the difficulties of the problem of Genesis? Certainly not. But it's incontestable that it errors and has laid down the most important fundamentals based upon irrefutable data. Properly speaking, the points still uncertain are only a matter of detail, whose solution, whatever it may be in the future, cannot harm the whole. Furthermore, uh, notwithstanding all the resources at its disposal, it has until now lacked an important element without which the work would never be complete. Of all the ancient Genesis, the one that comes closest to modern scientific data, notwithstanding the error it contains that are today demonstrated by the evidence, it's incontestably that of Moses. A few of its errors are more apparent than real. They arise either from a false interpretation of certain words, whose original meanings have been lost in passing from one language to another. The Bible was translated in 5 languages. Passing from one language to another through translation or Wolf's acceptation has changed with people's customs, or from the allegorical form peculiar to the Oriental style, taking it literally instead of searching for its spiritual meaning. The Bible obviously contains things that reasons developed by science could not accept today, and others that seem strange and objectionable because they are connected with customs that are no longer ours. But alongside this, one would be biased not to recognize that it contains great and beautiful things. Allegory takes up considerable space in it, and behind this veil hides sublime truths that will come to light if we look for the essence of the truth, because of the truth, of the dot, because then the absurd disappears. Allegory takes up considerable space in it, and behind this veil, it hides some truths that will come to light if we look for the essence of the dot, because then the absurd disappears. Why was this veil not lifted earlier? On one hand, because of the lack of understanding that only science and a health philosophy could furnish, and on the other, because of the principle of the absolute immutability of fate, the consequence of an overly blind respect for literalness, before which reason should bow down, and consequently the fear of compromising the scaffolding of beliefs framed on literal meaning, because these beliefs were rooted in a primitive starting point. It was feared that if the first link of the chain were broken, the entire weave of network would end up coming undone. Thus, eyes remained shut. However, shutting one's eyes to danger doesn't offer it. When a building leans, it's not more prudent to immediately replace the faulty stones with good ones rather than out of respect for the building's age, wait for the problem to become unfixable, thereby making it necessary to rebuild it from top to bottom. In taking its investigations to the ends of the earth and into the depth, depth of the heavens, science has undisputedly demonstrated the errors in the Mosaic Genesis. When taken literally, and the material impossibility for things to have happened in the exact way they are textually recorded. In doing so, science struck a deep blow to popular beliefs. The orthodox faith thus become uncertain, uncertain because it believed that its foundation stone had been pulled out from under it. But which would be right? Science moving ahead prudently and progressively over the solid ground of calculation and observation without affirming anything before having the proof well in hand, or a narrative writing at a time when the means of observation were completely lacking. After all, who must prevail? Someone who says that 2 plus 2 equals 5 and refuses to test it, or someone who says that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and proves it? But but then one might ask, if the Bible is a divine revelation, has God made a mistake? If it's not a divine revelation, it no longer has authority and Christianity collapses for lack of a foundation. One of two things applies. Either science is wrong or it's right. If it's right, then a contrary opinion cannot be true. There is no revelation that can prevail over the authority of the facts. Incontestably, God, who is all truth, cannot thus humans to error, either knowingly or unknowingly, otherwise God would not be God. Thus, if the facts contradict the words that are attributed to God, then we must logically conclude that either God didn't speak them, or such words have been misunderstood. If religion has suffered from its contradictions in some parts, the error is not because of science, which cannot make a fact out of something that is not, but because of humans for having prematurely established absolute dogmas, in aspas, I put aspas, of which they have made a matter of life or death concerning theories susceptible of being disproven by experience. There are things that we must resign ourselves to sacrifice it, like it or not, when we cannot do otherwise. As the world moves ahead with the will of a few unable to stop it, it's wisest to go along with it and adapt oneself to the new state of affairs rather than to cling to the past as it collapses and risk collapsing along with it. Out of respect for the texts regarded as sacred, should we impose silence on science? That would have been something as impossible as keeping the earth from turning. Religions, whichever ones they may be, have never gained anything by upholding patent errors. Science's mission is to discover the laws of nature. And since those laws are works of God, they cannot be contrary to religions founded on truth. To anathematize progress for being detrimental or to religion is to anathematize the very work of God. Furthermore, it would be not worthwhile because all the anathemas in the world will not prevent science from moving forward and the truth from coming to light. If religion refuses to move forward with science, then science will advance by itself. Only stagnant religions need fear to discoveries of science of science. Such discoveries are not threatening except to those who allow themselves to be outdistanced by progressive ideas, remaining immobilized in the absolutism of their beliefs. Generally, they have such a minuscule idea of the divinity that they cannot understand that assimilating the laws of nature revealed by science means glorifying God for God's works. In their blindness, they prefer to pay homage to the spirit of evil. Any religion that would not be in contradiction with the laws of nature at any point would have nothing to fear of progress and would be invulnerable. Science and religion walking together. The religion that don't walk with science is vulnerable and is not the truth. Science and religions are from God. All we are inside the word of God. God are in our hearts. In science, out of science. And religion that insists in not see the truth will be stopped, and science will come walking to the light. Then religion and science in from God, religions that make negative doubts about science is out of reality. Is this the conclusions until now by Kardec? And is this is only we understand that have histories to children, because children don't will understand a history by people in high degree in a university. Then you must talk histories that children will understand. When this child are growing till university, there this human being will understand true histories. Is this in reason? Is this okay? Religion and science must walk together. Is this for this week? Thank you your presence. God bless you and bless all of you uh, that are seeing these lives and so interesting the point of view of Kardec. How illuminated the spirit is Kardec. A good science, a real mind with science that take to us the truth about God, about laws of nature, and in this book they will analyze geologically this planet and only to walk together of science in this book. This book is the consequence of other four books that Kardec read. Kardec read all answers given by spirits. The spirits gave to Kardec information, not he obtained this by himself. Don't would this way. The mission of Kardec is using his scientific thought to analyze the answers of the spirits to millions of mediumships in the world that high spirits got all these messages arriving to Kardec. The same answers by millions of mediums in this world. In a time 1850, more or less, in century 19, that God opened the doors to spirituality presented to us true informations about religion and science. Is marvelous. And Kardec never said, this is finally truth. No. He, he said that we must continue studying. The Spirit said, you must study and work to discover science by your own efforts. We don't can give you all answers. You must study and conquer the knowledge that we take us in another level of evolution. Is this way that we are walking? And the movie from Stanley Kubrick, I remember I saw this movie in cinema, in rooms of cinema. And I remember those music about the the sun, when the sun appear in the morning, and the scene of human of caverns get a school in his hands. The first two this man discovered, the first two. This first two, this act is starting making neurons develop by this act. And until now, you use the iPhone. It was a great development. And start and imagine those music. This man of caverns securing those pieces of school in hands and have a first insight in our development that start our neurons in function. was the Adam, this man of cavern, with his Eve, and those was the Stanley Kubrick get this moment when with his school, not an apple, but his school is starting the saga of human being in this planet, developing neurons. After Acts, this man is starting to make those school in hand. And Stanley Kubrick get this moment and was the most important scene in the movie for me was that when those men on cover secure and hand those school and this music appeared so marvelous in Stanley Kubrick. What mind this man had a great intuitive idea is the Adam, the seed, and not an apple, but an school events. This is the reality that Kardec say. Science and religion must walk together. And thank you your attention. Until the next. Today I will post others matters. God bless all.